Welcome to Techies Reproductive Justice, the podcast, a place for technologists and community organizers to learn from each other. In this podcast, we'll explore security tips and operations security for organizers, how to help keep our movement safe online, the intersections and history of technology, reproductive justice, and other types of movement work, what organizing in the digital age looks like, and the pros and cons of technology and organizing. I'm your co-host, Maree.
And I'm your co-host, Lou. On today's episode, we will be talking with Tori and Annie, two doulas who situate themselves in communities of care. Annie is an emerging end-of-life doula based in Oakland, California, Wichi and Ohlone land, deepening her practice to provide compassionate support for people navigating end-of-life and their caregivers. With a master's in public policy from UC Berkeley and over 4 years in policy research and advocacy, Annie will soon join a research team focused on improving palliative care for patients and caregivers. She is a big believer in community care, costume parties, and caffeinated beverages.
Tori Evans is a fat, black, ungovernable queer based in Congaree and Cherokee land, or so-called Columbia, South Carolina. Their work is deeply rooted in abolition and the liberation of themselves and their people. Tori is a doula focused on the intersection of reproductive justice and abolition. Tori is an avid reader, professional napper, and amateur baker. Most Sundays, you can find her at home with her family. Before we get into our interview, it's time for T4RJ's media recommendations of the week. Your spot for all things reproductive justice, social justice, and tech media recommendations. This week, we want to highlight We Are Lady Parts. The series follows a British punk rock band named Lady Parts, which consists entirely of Muslim women. Director Nida Manzoor wanted to create a show full of joy, celebrating the nuances, complexities, and idiosyncrasies of being a Muslim woman. This show does a great job of highlighting the importance and the limits of representation. Now let's get into the episode. Thanks y'all for joining us today. I'm just going to go into the first question, which is please share the work that you do.
So I am a doula focused more in like the reproductive space. I do primarily birth, abortion work, and I'm currently training to be a lactation counselor. I also do community organizing and outreach, most specifically and recently creating liberatory spaces for joy and learning. And then lastly, with Mars, we are creating a mutual aid group focused on abortion access and logistical support and doula support, all that important stuff that goes along with abortion.
Thanks for that. I love hearing joy included in that. Spaces for joy, always important.
Yes, absolutely. Like without it, I don't think I would be continuing on. So
yeah, honestly, that's the reason I reached out to you. That's how Tori and I met, is like I just like messaged them on Instagram because I was like looking through, sounds like I'm stalking you, but I was just looking through your post because people were like, oh, this is an abortion doula in, do you want to say your location or no?
Yes, that's fine. Congaree, Cherokee lands, but more colonially known as Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah. So when I moved here, looking for other abortion doulas, and that was one of the reasons I reached out to you because it seemed like you were very into like creating those types of spaces. So thanks for sharing.
And do you want to share about your work?
Yeah, so I am a growing end-of-life doula, which means that I have been practicing with other doulas and training for the last few years and just starting my own practice, working with people to provide support around end-of-life, navigating their dying journey, whether it's for their own relationship with dying or providing care for someone else. And yeah, I do that here in Oakland and also soon to be in the Northeast as well. I also volunteer in hospice and do other organizing a lot around care work as well, like childcare and things like that.
Yay for the care workers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for both introducing a little bit about what you're doing. I'd love to dive a little deeper into it all. And I wonder if you can speak a bit about how your identities or your personal experiences or personal histories shape the work that you do today.
As a Black, queer, Black parent, I definitely, all those identities have shaped me to becoming more and more ungovernable as time progresses. I think I always say Black first because I feel like that contributes to all of how I am perceived and how I live in all my identities, how I experience life. So I think being a Black person and then adding additional layers of intersection right now in the time and place we are right now. I would like to say always has been this way, but in the time and place we are right now, I feel like it is impossible to exist without becoming ungovernable. That's at least my experience. But yeah, I think watching so much struggle and pain and harm happen, it's impossible to separate my identity from my work. I more specifically have made the decision to stop supporting non-BIPOC clients in birth spaces simply because witnessing the disparity in treatment from like a Black parent to a white parent was causing me a lot of harm. And then also I felt like my work needed to be with people that looked like me and experienced life like me.
Thanks so much for sharing, Tori. I like what you're saying about becoming ungovernable. I feel like that needs to be in the title of this episode somewhere because, yeah, snaps to that.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me too. I wonder, Tori, if you could share a little bit more about what becoming ungovernable means to you.
For me, it's numerous things. It's kind of like one, not necessarily accepting the status quo as it is, and additionally participating in as many radical acts of change that I can, whether that be supporting an abortion or delivering a meal to a friend who is having a hard time parenting. I think those acts of care and love really lean into being ungovernable, because I think when you are stuck in what the colonialist imperialist mindset of being an individual is, the more willing you are to just go with what is already established. So making the decision to do little acts of care and share information, I think that's why I love reading, and that's one of the reasons why I love reading so much, because it's information at your hands at any point. I know that's what the internet is, but there's something different about getting it from a book for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. Annie, do you want to share about your personal history that led you to the work you do?
Yeah, definitely. Well, as a queer person, I feel like the concept of chosen family and kin care that's not blood is both vital for me and also just politically something I can get down with. And so that feels really important to the work of all these kinds of care that Tori's talking about too. And also, yeah, really grounded in my politics around bodily autonomy and everyone's right to have access to care that respects their identities and their choices in their own body. And that can really show up in end-of-life care, as a lot of time we're thinking about, what would respecting someone's choices and moving with dignity through this transition look like for them. And that's really the role of the doula, is to kind of uplift that. I am also a white person with class privilege, and I think that you can't ask other people to do death work or grief work if you haven't done your own. And so a lot of my death work consists of, reconciling with and grieving the shit that my ancestors have pulled and calling on my benevolent ancestors to guide a path forward that I can connect to as a more just legacy and showing up in how I want to build a different world. So that guides my own death work personally. And yeah, in my own practice, I think it will look like a lot of things. But like I said, everyone is going to have their own relationship with dying that's going to be specific to their culture, maybe their religion, their beliefs. And so my role is to kind of support someone, but also recognize that I might not be everyone's doula. And part of being, in the network of care is being a bridge and saying hey, I can refer you to someone that really might speak to this thing that would help you feel seen or support you in this way that I might not be able to. And that feels really like an important part of doula work to me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. No, I was going to say similar. I mean, you both touched on community care. So kind of getting into Like our next question, as doulas, can you talk about what community care looks like in your practice and the importance of it within your work and organizing work as a whole?
Yes, I took some notes for this question because I felt strongly about it. So I would first want to say, in terms of opening my mind to what community care could be, Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower and her creation of Acorn really, and like community living, really enhanced what I thought community care could be. And one of the things that I really took from it is how vital it was to share information for survival. So, like, training people for medical care, growing food, herbalism, and archival work, art, all of these things that are like essential to us as like beings. So I view community care, and I said this a little bit in the last question, but it's, for me, it's sharing resources and creating space to share resources. And that includes resources for like everyone. So that also brings in disability justice practice for me, because it has to be accessible. Like, everybody deserves the information and everybody should be able to access the information. And that is largely how I approach community organizing and birth work and abortion access work. It's just the need for like, I hold the information, so it's my responsibility to share it. And I think that is why I do what I do, why it's so important for me to be like a community birth worker and not have price limitations for folks, really. I haven't turned anyone away. And I do understand, like, people deserve to get paid. I'm not saying like this is could be right for everyone, but doing sliding scale payment plans, fundraising for my fee, trying to make it as equitable as possible so people can access the information and feel safe in their choice and autonomous in their choice. And in terms of abortion access care, I don't charge anyone for that. I don't think that's something that should be paid for.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Parable of the Sower. I'm rereading that right now because I feel like it's so relevant, or it's been relevant. But thank you for like talking about just accessibility in community organizing work. I feel like that's something that even in those types of spaces is sometimes forgotten about. And I feel like disability justice, especially when it comes to just community care, is really important because it allows us to tailor things to a wide variety of experiences, if that makes sense.
Well, I think about this like the tech term that we use in Techies for RJ about designing for the margins, and that Combahee River Collective quote of, if Black women were free, then everyone else would be free, because that would mean that like all of the systems of oppression have fallen down. And I feel like that's sort of what you're saying about like, yeah, if everyone has access to a thing, that means that like it's better for everybody. It's not just better for those people who maybe didn't have access, it's actually like better for the entire community.
Exactly.
I'm so glad you brought up Octavia. I'm reading Kindred right now. And when you were asking me about like, oh, sci-fi, we were talking about sci-fi before we started recording. I don't know if that counts as sci-fi, but I'm glad she's here with us on this podcast.
Yeah, I would definitely count that as sci-fi.
Okay, well, I can share a little bit. I think a lot of the ways that we would show up in community care are also how we would think about showing up for someone who is grieving or, you know, in a really serious caregiving situation. You bringing a meal. I think, Tori, you spoke about that as even like a radical act of being ungovernable, like bringing a meal for someone, helping out with childcare, pet care, helping communicate information about what's going on. All of those skills feed our organizing movements as well. And they are also how we show up for each other when we need each other. So I kind of see the beauty and the benefits of learning to do those things in all contexts. And then I think there's a piece of organizing which is also like around access to care, which is a huge piece, especially I think end-of-life doulas are in a space of like still trying to integrate into some medical spaces. There's not a lot around like Medicare, you know, paying for coverage of services. So I think there's still some elements of trying to get access to these kinds of community-based supports in end-of-life care that organizing can speak to.
I'm curious if either of you have had an experience with like technology affecting the way that you work or the way that you organize these systems of care. the way you find clients, maybe. Yeah, how has technology, since we are on the Techies for Reproductive Justice, the podcast, how has technology impacted the work that you do?
Going back to information, it's how I share information and share information safely. Signal, Proton.me, like sites like that make safe communication a thing, which is critical in the South when you're doing abortion work. Also, it's like how I've connected with so many people. Mars was saying earlier that we met online. It's true. So creating intentional connections with community people, I honestly, like, that's where most of my organizing stuff and work has come from, by like meeting people online and doing stuff, like actual actionable stuff out in community.
Yeah, I would agree with some of what, Tori is saying about how it can be a place to share information, to connect, and that's crucial. I do think there is something happening with more tech-enabled healthcare and hospice care in which people are envisioning these platforms as a way to either automate some aspects of healthcare or use algorithms to determine like when someone should, say, move to hospice and things like that. And I would say my bias is always towards slower relational work, and like something is lost when we automate all these decision points. But I'm curious to learn more about that. I think also there are more opportunities. There's more Medicare funding for hospice, things like that. And so you do see like tech companies moving into that space because, it's enticing for them. And I mean, just with my like care work advocacy hat on, there are so many home health aides that are working for these companies, and they are making really low wages and poor working conditions. And these are mostly women, more likely to be women of color. And like, if we have all these tech companies moving into that space and that money is not going to the people doing the work, I have an issue with that. So I do see that happening. But yeah, like what Tori's saying on the flip side, like we need platforms to share information and like more efficiently connect people with resources. That's huge.
I kind of want to go into what you were saying. I did want to see if y'all had any like negatives, and you kind of did bring up some negatives, Annie, about how technology has affected how you approach community care. I don't know if you want to expand more on any of those points, Annie, or Tori, if you wanted to add any points, I guess, like drawbacks of technology, if any.
Yeah, I think it's kind of at a high level if we think about automating or introducing more efficiency into some of these hands-on decisions, or really like vulnerable moments that have to do with people's bodies and health and autonomy. We just lose so much, and we also act like we don't have something to gain by participating in that moment as a human also. Like, for example, I have learned so much from either doing death work or grief work in my own community or through volunteering, and now as a death doula, by sitting with people in that time and listening and being and breathing and being of service. Like, that is it's just a very human moment, and a time when it can often be very isolating. And if we actually like turn towards each other, I think there's just a lot of benefits for all of us in those moments. And so I think we act like something can be lost when we automate some of that away.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Annie. I feel like that's just speaking to like the whole push with AI. I feel like a lot of people are really excited about it. And I don't know, we've talked about this in some of our organizing meetings for Techies for Reproductive Justice. It's like complex feelings about it. I think Lou does as well. But yeah, Tori, did you have any drawbacks that you wanted to think or talk about?
Not that I can think of right now, but Annie's perspective about the automation does have me thinking a lot about what those impacts could be for the reproductive side of things, but nothing is coming to my mind yet. But it might later when I'm taking a bath and relaxing.
No, you're good.
When I was thinking about this question beforehand, I feel like often when we hear tech, we think of like one kind of tech, which is like AI or coding or those things. You can tell I'm not a techie. But I also have learned more about other kinds of technologies in the end of life space, some of which are pretty cool, in that people are really trying to rethink the way that we deal with human bodies after end of life transitions, because the very typical, concrete tomb burial graveyards is very consumptive of resources and land, and absolutely respecting everyone's choice to do whatever feels good for them with their disposition. But also there are some new technologies out there where you can be either composted, or there's this new technology I just learned about called aquamation. So just to bring in some other kinds of technology that people are being innovative around care for bodies and things like that with an environmental perspective.
I will say that's really cool, Annie. I myself want to be cremated, and I want everyone who loved me to carry around a little bit of ash, but my sister said that's unrealistic. Unreasonable. But I did just think of a drawback, and it's just something small, but it's something that I noticed with smart devices in your home that do recording. And I worked customer service for a long time over the phone, and one of the things that they always said is like, make sure you don't have any of those devices in your home because you record people's sensitive information. So when I have phone calls with people about abortion access, if like signal doesn't feel good to them, or they may not have a smartphone, whatever, I always ask them if they have a smart device in their home, and if they do, if they can turn the mic off. But I will say surveillance for sure is one of the negative drawbacks of tech. And I don't know if you know this, Mars, but have you ever seen in South Carolina, in Columbia, we have these boxes of cameras, and they have like a blue light on them or whatever. And there's literally no oversight. It's just whoever in like the legal system has access, they just have access. And that's scary. And I'm sure leads to a lot of policing, especially in traditionally marginalized neighborhoods, because that's where the most of them are. But yeah, I think surveillance is one of the major drawbacks of tech.
Yeah, that's definitely one that freaks me out a lot, especially I've just heard things, especially with the new administration. I mean, they both suck, but I've just heard some really scary things about, like, I think we've talked about this in Techies for Reproductive Justice, like tracking through highways and stuff like that, which can trace back to like, oh, why was this person going to this state and then they came back a few days later. And I think about that, especially in the South, because I've never lived anywhere but the South, so I don't really know how it is in other places. I know California has really good like privacy laws. I think is like the main state that has really good privacy laws. But for other places, like that freaks me out about how many more people are going to be like criminalized because of that and have been criminalized.
Yeah, the surveillance is super real. I mean, anyone who's ever been just having a normal conversation with a friend and then gets an ad for like, whatever head massager you were talking about or whatever, like it's happening in so many ways all the time and can absolutely be instrumentalized to track people who are going to abortion clinics, although we haven't seen it happen officially in that way yet, but the tools are definitely there.
Yeah. Wait, I had a quick question that I wanted to go back to. Okay, because I don't know if you remember this conversation in the Techies for Reproductive Justice. Why didn't I just say T for RJ? That was so long. T for RJ chat, Lou. So, Annie, have there been people who like come to you about like, what do I do with all my accounts when I die? We were talking about this in the chat. And then I was like, oh, digital death doulas need to be a thing. Because, like, I know sometimes you can make the page, like, be, like, a remembrance page. But then sometimes if, like, no one had the password or no one had, like, any access to it, it's like, has anyone ever come to you and asked about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. End of life doulaing can be a lot about information and practical planning as much as it can be about the like emotional and spiritual side of things. Definitely with the finances and the password, there are ways you can set up your bank account to be payable upon death to someone else. But there's also other more like informal ways that you can share passwords. There are different secure platforms where you can give someone else like a master password, and then you'd have like your iPhone and your social and all that stuff. And I think that's why it's so important for pretty much anyone to be thinking about not only their relationship with dying and mortality, but also some of these like practical things so that that transition, whenever it may happen, is just a little smoother. And also you protect the things that you care about and the people that you care about.
Everyone needs a password manager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. That's so interesting. That's something
Yeah.
I've thought or wondered about because I'm like, oh shit, I have so many accounts. Like, I hope, and also like just pictures and stuff, like who gets someone's phone or technology, and or do they have anything on there that no one should see? Like, that's kind of like, ugh. I feel like that scares me.
Apple has a legacy contact thing that you can set up, which is cool. I set that up and it just like sends your photos and stuff and your passcode to people so they can access it after you die.
Oh, that's smart. I don't have Apple products, minus for work. So I gotta see if Lenovo does that.
Yeah, there are some platforms that kind of walk you through all of this. I'll have to look up the name after this, but it would help you with like your advanced directive and your password manager and like all that stuff. But I also know people that just make like a Google Drive folder, and they're like, okay, open this if I go, and this has all my stuff, you know. So kind of whatever works, because I think also like accessibility and being able to find the tool that works for you is important.
Well, y'all, what's one thing you wish more people understood about doula work and what it means to be a doula?
For me, in the reproductive space, I would like to say doula work doesn't need a certification. I feel like that's a colonial mindset. When this work is for Black and Indigenous and people of color has been like handed down from our ancestors, and so it's in us. And I do think trainings are important because like information is important and learning is important, especially if you're going to do the work. But trainings and things should have as little barriers as possible for BIPOC folks, especially. They should be able to access the information as freely as possible. And I think, yeah, it's just one of those things where I think a lot of times there are with certifications, like for instance, you can't get Medicaid reimbursements unless you have an official certification. And that's a barrier to a birth worker's money. Like I said, it's passed down ancestrally, and putting those barriers on it really is limiting to folks. I got into birth work because I was basically my sister's post birth doula, you know? So that was something that I just felt in my heart to do because that was my sister. And the advocacy part of me just came out. It wasn't like I needed a certification to do that. But yes, I think that's the one thing I wish more people understood about doula work. And honestly, that it's a lot of things. It's not just birth work. It's death work. It's post-op surgery work. There's a lot of different hands of doula work.
That makes me think of, have you seen, I saw this during one of my abortion doula trainings. It was called Granny Midwives. I'll see if I can find it in the notes that we took. But it was basically history of like midwifery and just like how it's, I guess, ties to Black culture and stuff, and how I think it was basically once it started becoming more, you have to get a certification for this type of thing. I think pushing some of those people out because basically like white doctors were like, y'all, like they're just basically medicalizing it a lot when it wasn't like a very medicalized thing. Have you seen that?
Yes, I saw specifically Ugandan granny midwives had a process for C-sections. It wasn't called C-sections, like a belly birth, basically. And doctors from, I can't remember, but it was white men, came over and basically took the process, medicalized it, and, now they're getting hella profit off of these C-section rates. I could go on and on and on about C-section rates and unnecessary inductions, especially as the holidays are coming up. But yeah, the midwives in Uganda had a very like peaceful, herbal, holistic way to do it. And then white doctors came over and took it and made it its own thing here that is ultimately not. There are necessary moments for C-sections, but I do believe a lot of them could be avoided if it weren't for capitalist greed and white supremacy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I shared, I don't know if y'all have seen the documentary, Lou or Annie, but I shared a link that explains it much better than me to the documentary. I mean, we'll also put this in the notes too, like the show notes. It's really interesting. Basically goes into what Tori was talking about. And I think you can find the documentary on YouTube. Pretty sure that's where we watched it during one of my abortion doula trainings.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that article. Annie, do you want to share anything you wish people understood about doula work?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said all that, Tori. I feel like I was thinking something similar. Doulas have been here always, forever. People have been taking care of their people. People have been taking care of their dead. People have been taking care of their sick forever. This is not like a new concept. We just, live in a capitalist white supremacist society that wants us to like look away, to outsource it, to pay somebody else to do it. And I think by rejecting that and recognizing all of the doulas that are already out there and doing this work, like we're resisting that. I also believe that doulas are for, at least end of life doulas are for anyone, and I want people to understand that too and uplift that we can all be cultivating our relationship with dying and caring for those around us who may be dealing with illness and their own mortality. And so, we can be cultivating that relationship at any time and those skills at any time. And so that is what I want people to know.
Yeah, you don't need a certification to like be a kind and caring person.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like show up and share information and figure out the workarounds and the loopholes. And, I think that is a huge part of this too.
Because that also is a barrier for people who want to do this work too, having to get a certification. You both spoke to accessibility of it on that end, but also saying a doula is for everyone. Because sometimes people think it's like a very specific thing. I'm like, no, you can have one too. Okay, I think we're on our last question. Okay, so just to end things on a fun question, what's your favorite thing to read right now?
Reading is literally my favorite. I have a little digital library where I keep everything. Actually, and buying books is a little bit of a hobby too, just because it's just so nice to have them. But right now, I am reading a book called Sky Full of Elephants. It is science fiction. All of the white people disappear off planet Earth. So that's been really interesting. But I would say my favorite book this year would have to be Belly of the Beast by Deshaun something. I'll come back with his name.
Is it Harris? Deshaun Harris?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good book.
It's basically a book about being Black, fat, and queer and ungovernable. So props to Deshaun.
Yeah, that's a good book. I have that in my audio library. Also, I just looked up the book that you said, Sky Full of Elephants. I'm like, I need to read that. What about you, Annie?
Yeah, well, I mentioned this earlier. I'm reading Kindred by Octavia Butler, and it is gripping and fascinating and terrifying. And I mean, she's fantastic. It's a gift.
Yes. Obviously, love her and her contributions to science fiction. But sometimes have y'all noticed whenever you look up Black science fiction, she's the only one that comes up. At least whenever I'm going to the store, I feel like science fiction is usually oh, let me see if I can find some Black writers, and it's literally just her. I'm like, there's other ones. There's other people too.
LeVar Burton used to have a podcast called LeVar Burton Reads, and he's a big science fiction fan.
That's such a good podcast.
Yeah, and there's a couple of books I have read from based off the short stories that he has shared. So if you're looking for more science fiction Black folk, maybe that would be a good place to search.
And I think there's that website called Sista Sci-Fi now that's specifically about, let me make sure I didn't. Okay, yeah, sistasci-fi.com. That is about Black Indigenous science fiction.
Oh, cool.
We'll also post in the show notes. But they have Instagram and a website, but they're cool too.
Oh, cool. Thank you for sharing that.
I love how we edited out science fiction part of the question, but that's just always where it comes back to, because
I feel like science fiction is like so. I feel like it's really political. Like I realized getting older, I'm like, oh shit, like it's always about something political, and I feel like that's just the mindset we're all in right now.
yeah, there's the Black sci-fi writer Walidah Imarisha, who co-edited Octavia's Brood with Adrienne Maree Brown, that like short story collection. Like, she talks about the relationship between abolition and sci-fi, of like, you know, abolition is sci-fi, like to be able to reimagine a world in which everyone is taken care of and get their needs met, like that's sci-fi.
Yeah.
I love thinking of it like that.
Yes.
Ooh, Annie, another thing, since you are a death doula, a science fiction book. It's called What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky. And it's short stories, but there's a short story in there about there's this basically a grief worker, and what she does is like eat people's grief. It's really good.
Oh my gosh, I need to read this.
It's really
That's got to go in the show notes.
good.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm looking all this stuff up. I'm like,
I have so many tabs open now.
no, same. Lou, did you want to share what you're reading as well?
Oh, thanks. Well, I just finished this sci-fi book, The Memory Police. That's about an island in which things one by one start to disappear. Really deals with a lot of grief and sadness. But I'm looking for a new book because I just finished that one. So excited to look at some of these recommendations.
Not sci-fi related, but I don't think enough adults read YA. I've been trying to read more YA this year.
I love YA. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's some good
Me
YA
too.
books. A lot of really good ones have come out, but yeah, no queer ones as well. But
The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic High School, I think. I could be messing up that name. I'm looking it up right now.
Incredible.
Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. It's really good. And there's like gay panic, all that. Fun stuff.
okay, writing that one down too. Okay, and then what I'm reading, I'm rereading. I don't know if y'all have read Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars. It's a really good book. It's about a trans woman, like, I guess, led gang type thing. So it's by, I think, Cheng Thom. Yeah, Cheng Thom, who's an Asian trans woman. But in the book, I guess I don't want to give too much away, but like the main character is also an Asian trans woman, and she like leaves her family so she can transition, and then she ends up meeting like this gang and town of like trans women who are like basically trying to survive, and unfortunately one of them is murdered, so there's like a kind of a split because some of them are like, we need to go fight them, and then the other ones were like, we don't want to use violence. So it's a really good book. I don't know what genre you would call it because she writes in a way that's very, if the word I'm looking for, surrealist, I think. I'm not the best at remembering genres, but it's really good. It's not necessarily science fiction. It gives me those vibes, but it's not science fiction.
Google says it's transgender surrealist fiction.
Oh, okay, I was right.
There you
I
go.
really was like, I feel like that's what it is. It's really good. I'm
I've read
rereading
that
it
book.
because you have.
Actually recommended to me by how Annie and I know each other, which is my boyfriend and Annie's friend recommended that book to me. And it's so good. That was how I knew. I was like, you're a good
That's
recommendation.
awesome. No, that book is like one of my favorites. I feel like I've listened to it like 3 times now.
Yeah, I'm gonna
So
search
good.
for the audio. It sounds really good.
No, I think you'll like it.
I was literally going to shout out Coda because I was like, what book do I love right now? I love reading Lou's boyfriend's book that they're writing. Aspiring author.
Wait, they're writing a book?
Yeah, they're writing I would even call it sort of like a surrealist memoir.
Trans surrealist.
Yeah,
We're still in that
trans-surrealist.
genre.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
That
beautiful.
is awesome.
Okay, I have to also plug a deathy YA book. Has anyone read Cemetery Boys?
Oh my god, I love. Sorry, I'm.
Did you read it? So good.
It's really good. I don't know if y'all, Lou or Tori, have read it. I don't know, Anna, you can talk about it. It's really good, and it's gay.
It's so cute. It's so gay. It's so queer. A lot of it takes place in and around a cemetery. I won't say anymore.
I need to reread it now that you brought it up because that's another one of my favorites.
It's so cute. I just like ate it up.
Also, I think it has like good gay trans man experiences because like I feel like we don't see those a lot. So
Definitely.
Thank you for all these recommendations. Thank you all so much for your time. It's been so wonderful to hear you talk about being doulas and your vision of community care. It's happening every day in your hands.
Thank you for having me and affirming me that way. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was such a beautiful conversation. You all are amazing.
Yeah, I really appreciate y'all.
All right. Bye.
Before we close out, we'd love to urge you to donate to your local abortion fund. To find your local abortion fund, go to abortionfunds.org and click Find an Abortion Fund. From there, you can enter your state.
This episode was brought to you by Techies for Reproductive Justice, a project of the Digital Defense Fund. Your hosts for today's episode were Lou and Maree. Thanks to our fabulous, fun, and flirty editor. Thank you also to Tori and Annie for sharing your stories with us today. If you liked what you heard, stay in touch with us by subscribing. Want to become a member of T4RJ or have ideas for future episodes? Check out our website, techiesforrj.org, to learn more and send us a message. Again, that's techies4rj.org. And thank you to all of our listeners. We're grateful to be in this movement together. We'll see you on the internet.